Hello there. You're listening to 10 Questions, where we discuss the wet plate collodion process and the photographers that create these unique images known as ambrotypes and tintypes. I'm your host, Chad Shryock, wet plate photographer for Pork Pie Photography based in Fort Collins, Colorado. In each episode, I've asked a modern day practitioner to sit down with me and talk about how they got involved with this vintage process, share some information on their gear and studio, and provide some valuable insights into their creative process. So whether you're just beginning to dabble your toes in the collodion ethers, or you're a seasoned silver bath expert, hang on and see what develops with 10 questions. In this episode, we get to hear from another couple of people that were looking for something new to pursue while the pandemic raged on. And by something new, I really mean something old. Known for at least one viral TikTok post, they have evoked a lot of interest by sharing this process with their sitters. Based in Revere, Massachusetts, I'd like to welcome Maureen Feeley and Dave Caramello to 10 Questions. Hi, Dave
Chad.
and Maureen. How are you tonight?
Great, Chad. Thanks for having us.
Good.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys for being on the podcast. So, prior to the pandemic, you weren't shooting any collodion, right?
No.
That's correct.
And no real formal backgrounds in photography from either one of you?
That would also be correct.
Okay. Dave, I think I saw that you were a musician, right?
That is true. Yes,
Okay.
I pursued music for a good chunk of my life, so there is a bit of an artistic background.
Okay. What are you playing these days?
I am a guitar player.
Nice.
Play primarily Fender Stratocasters.
Ah, okay. Very good. I am a hack guitarist myself. I've got a few guitars. My first guitar that I bought whenever I was in high school was a Strat HM. So it was a heavy metal version of the Strat. It was kind of the late 80s whenever I bought that one. So
Gotcha. With the double humbucker in
with
it.
the double humbucker, yep.
There
and
you go. Yeah.
Kind of the Floyd Rose.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. And what about you, Maureen? What's your background?
Well, I was an esthetician for I would say most of my career, probably for about the last 20 years or so, and I I had that job right up until the pandemic, and that was it for for my aesthetic career. And there's definitely no going back now since my hands are usually stained black from the silver. So,
Okay. Yep. So you're used to being in people's faces, though.
yes, I am.
So what was the spark for you guys that really made you look into tintype photography?
That's a good question. So, as Maureen stated, she was an esthetician. So, when COVID hit and everything started shutting down, her occupation was one of the first to go. I fortunately was working in sales and marketing, so I was still able to work from home. But after a couple of weeks of being cooped up in the house, Mo was going a little stir crazy and suggested that we find some type of hobby. So our
Okay.
first course of action was to buy a couple of digital cameras and worked with those for a couple of weeks, shooting the desolate landscapes. And Maureen did some research on digital photography and Photoshop and all the things that come with digital photography. During that research, she came across a tintype, and as they say, the rest is history.
Okay. Do you
Yeah.
remember where you first saw that tintype and what was it?
That's a really good question. I'm pretty sure that it was a video that I had come across on YouTube. I can't remember the photographer's name, but she would go to Sundance every year and film, all the actors and stars, and she would try to think of something new and different every year. And I can't remember the year it was. I think it was I'm really not sure, maybe 2017, 2018, she went and did tintypes. So I was seeing people like Robert Redford and, stars like that you're used to seeing how they look, but seeing them in this format was just was so different for me, and I just became obsessed with it. Just seeing, people in that in such a different way, such a raw but beautiful way. Just I just had to know how to do this, and just became obsessed with it basically. And our digital cameras are collecting dust.
Was this a joint obsession, or did one of you pull the other along with him?
That's a great question too. I mean, it very quickly became a joint obsession. I will say that. We had just dropped a couple of $1,000s on digital cameras, and I was like, "You want to do what?" But okay, let's try this instead. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, and it's funny too because after she had come across the photo and started going down this little rabbit hole of wanting to learn more about tintypes, she came across Justin Baroki, who is the owner of New York City Tintype. And I was just finishing up work for the afternoon, and she came downstairs and she said, "So, I think I'm going to go to New Jersey and take a tintype workshop with this guy that I just talked to online." And I'm like, "Time out. You're going where? In the middle of what? To New Jersey, to some guy's farm that we don't know that you just met online?" So we had a little discussion about that. And being that the pandemic was just taking hold, I said, maybe we can do like a FaceTime with him or something. And Justin actually had never done a FaceTime, but did agree to do that with us. So we ended up doing a day and a half FaceTime with Justin, in which he was able to kind of, first gave us a shopping list, obviously. So we had to go out and get all our chemicals and a
Right.
little speed Graflex camera. But after that, it was pretty much a day and a half of just kind of learning the technique and everything that's involved with wet plate. And then we had the gift of time with nothing nothing to do and nowhere to go but to just practice, 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 and
Yeah.
shoot for hours on end, which was, now that I think back, frustrating, but at the same time it was really fun and exciting.
Yeah, I think we're probably the only people that learned how to do wet plate over FaceTime.
Justin was on the show in the first season, and he had mentioned during that session that the two of you had reached out to him, and he put together a list of equipment and chemistry and things to kind of
Yes.
get you started. So, so,
Exactly.
so I guess, how was that process trying to learn it remotely over FaceTime? How did it go? I mean,
It got us started. Yeah, it went actually pretty well. Or so we thought. Little did we know you know, how many problems we were going to be having throughout the months. But
But yeah, we were able to get images, after that first day and a half session with Justin. Even during that first day, he kind of gave us a setup to try to get an image, and we actually were able to. We actually still have that first photo. It's a
mhm.
picture of one of my guitars,
nah.
but yeah, it gave us the basics and the groundwork that we needed to get started. And like I said, from there, it was, if we were in a normal 9 to 5 setup and coming home from work and then, having dinner and then saying at 8 o'clock, "Okay, do you want to go try to practice some tintype?" It probably never would have come to fruition for us the way it has. So I kind of look at the pandemic, no pun intended, as our silver lining, so to speak.
Yeah. So first image was of a guitar. I figured it would have been, since the two of you were going through the process at the same time, you could have like lined up cameras across from each other and taken shots.
Well, there was a lot of that. There was definitely a lot of that.
Actually, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think Dave is incorrect about the guitar. Or I know we did do the guitar, but I think it wasn't as glamorous as that. I think it was a soup can.
In front of my
Ah,
guitar,
Oh, okay. It was in
ah.
front. All right, I take that back. It was in
just to give
front of
some
the guitar.
contrast to everything that was
Yeah,
there.
who
Yeah,
who cares about
Justin
that
wanted
soup
us
can?
to. Yeah.
Exactly.
And this is one of the Fender Stratocasters, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
very good.
Yeah.
What were some of the other resources that you guys used during that time to kind of help hone your craft?
Well, we had actually reached out to Mark and Franz Osterman, and they really helped us a lot and continue to be our mentors. I would say we went up. We've gone up to Rochester a few times to do some workshops with them, and we actually the last time we went up, we did a spirit photography workshop. So that was a lot of fun. And they actually came here to our house to do a workshop because luckily they were going to visit France's sister that lives in Rockport, which isn't too far from us. So I'd always said, you know, maybe you guys could stop at our house on the way, and actually we were really fortunate that they did. To have them in our space was super helpful.
Yeah, that's great. Now, I guess going through the process together, do both of you kind of equally divvy up the tasks? I mean,
Mm.
it's not one person runs the camera and one person's doing the dark room. Are you both pretty equally skilled with all the different manipulations?
I would say that, it kind of worked out that I do a lot more of the photography work and Maureen does a lot more of the process. So I would say in terms of the two of us, Maureen's probably a little more well-rounded because I don't pour as many plates as she does, although I do help her with the development process and kind of keeping count for us and just making sure that things are coming together the way they need to. So and it's not anything that we kind of planned that way. It's just something that kind of came together as we started doing this, and then when we decided to do this as a business, it just kind of stayed that way. I mean, obviously, when we were learning, we were both making plates, we were both doing everything pretty much equally. But now that we're in a business setup where we have people coming to the studio, we've kind of divvied it off a little bit. So but it works well. It works really well.
Yeah, that's great. You mentioned that your studio space is at your home. What's the arrangement like there?
So we had a semi-finished basement space that had been underutilized for quite some time. It was actually the old rehearsal room for the bands when I was a teenager. And this is actually the home that we're in right now is the house that I had grown up in, which I purchased from my family about 15 or so years ago. But so it was kind of the perfect space for us. We had ample room to create a dark space. We have plenty of room to have our shooting area. We do have a low ceiling, so it does limit us in terms of the size of the crowd that we can kind of get into one photo. But usually, if we've got a bigger crowd, we'll go to an 8 by 10, and that gives us enough real estate on the plate to work with. It's not usually created any type of an issue for us.
Yeah, that's great. I guess with having your studio at your house, it makes it very convenient. I have pretty much the same arrangement here, but every once in a while, I think, boy, sure would be great to have another setup outside of the home and have just a little bit more space and maybe even some natural light. So, have you have you looked into
I
doing
couldn't
anything
agree
like
with you
that?
more.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, my I guess my ultimate dream setup would be if we were, fluent enough with the business that we could have our own kind of studio loft setup where we have some nice natural light to work with and enough space to set up our strobe lighting setup as well, and maybe even at some point when we kind of outgrow, I won't say outgrow, when the house outgrows us as we're getting older here, maybe we'll find a space that we can kind of live and work out of as well. That would kind of be the ideal setup, having a loft space that does have that kind of, natural light setting like you were mentioning.
yeah. What about pop-ups? Have you had the chance to take the show on the road any?
We have, let's see, the first time we did an event was a couple of summers ago at Copley Square in Boston, where it was sort of like an open market. And we did about four, I think, and two went really well, and then two were nightmares because it was over 90 degrees. So
Uh,
all of our plates were fogging, and it was a disaster.
yeah. What, what's
Yeah,
what's been
four.
kind of the reception at these types of events?
It was really
So
positive. Sorry.
yeah, no, I was going to say it is positive. I think we've done a few pop-ups now, and as Mo said, when we first started, the open air pop-up was what we did initially. Challenging in terms of you don't know what you're going to get for weather, and you have to book them so far in advance. So the last two that we did that happened in August and September were really hot and humid days and really affected our ability to make plates on location. So what we found is we've actually done some workshop, not workshops, but demonstrations more so for a couple of the local museums. One was the Wadsworth that's in Hartford, Connecticut, where they kind of put it out to their membership and let them know that we're going to have a tintype artist in to do a demonstration where everybody can kind of see the process, get a little bit of background on the history of wet plate, and then get their actual tintype taken during the session. So we found those where we can kind of be in more of a controlled environment have worked much better as opposed to the open airs where you're not really sure what you're going to get. And I do find with that it's more of a an audience that knows what they want to come for, whereas these open air sessions, you have someone coming out of the gym with their gym bag and a Nike shirt on, and yeah, they may want to take the photo, but it's not really like it doesn't lend itself to what we're doing,
Sure.
so I find that partnering with like a museum, or we've done it even with a photo equipment shop here that's local to us, Hunt's Photo in Melrose, things like that have really worked out well for us.
Yeah, and a lot of times those folks that are kind of checking out the markets, they're not real sure what you're doing anyways, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So they become those open airs became more of like marketing for us,
Right.
more so than actually producing, you know, good works,
Yeah.
so to speak.
How do you guys describe to a novice what a tintype is?
I would say we tell them it's a process that was developed in 1851, and the process that we're using are tintypes, which are made on a piece of aluminum, and it's a direct positive. And the best part about it is that it'll last forever. And what I really love about it is that when you look at yourself in a tintype, it's how you see yourself when you look in the mirror, which I think that's why so many people like the way they look, because it's just more familiar to you.
Yeah.
So I think that's the way I would describe it.
Yeah. That's great. I think it's definitely a challenge being at these types of open air events when, you know, people just randomly walk by and yeah, they might see this old camera, but they don't really know for sure what's going on there, right?
Right.
Is there a digital camera inside of that old looking camera or
Right.
what?
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny that you say that. When we have people into the studio, we do it more like a an interactive kind of date night event. So people will come in. We'll have a charcuterie board for them. We'll offer them a beverage of their choice. We'll kind of talk a little bit about the process and the history of wet plate. We'll show them some tintypes from back in the 1800s. And then when we bring them down into the studio to get started, we usually let them kind of look at each other through the ground glass. And everybody is always amazed when we take the back of the camera, when we take the ground glass off the back of the camera, and they see that the inside is just a black box with
Yeah.
a hole to let some light in. They're like, "Wait a minute, that's not a digital screen that's on there." We're like, "No, and there's no digital screen that can give you as sharp an image as what this photo is going to give.
Right,
This
right.
wet plate that we're going to make for you."
No, that's great. Do you guys get into the historic aspect whenever you have guests over and maybe share examples of vintage photographs or
We do, yes. We have a small collection of some tintypes that we've accumulated from over the last few years. One of my favorites is I have a couple of little gems, the tiny tintypes, and I love showing people those and having them put it in the palm of their hand and put the glass over it and see it up close and how tiny it is, and you can still see all the detail in it. I also have a tiny little photo album of all gems, and I I love to point out that there's a guy on the second page that has a black eye. People love seeing that, and
I've
so
seen
I
that
love.
picture online. That's pretty neat.
Oh, funny.
That guy must have just
Um,
stumbled into the tintype studio and
right,
it's like, okay, let's just
Yeah.
get this over with.
Right, right.
right.
I'm wondering if the local police station called them and said, "Hey, we need a convict's picture taken here. Can you come down? We need a mugshot."
Yeah.
And then we have a couple of amber types, and we have one amber type that I really think is great. It's a photo of a woman, and she has a painted on brooch and a belt buckle and a gold ring that they had done after they varnished the plate, which is, I love, sharing to people. It's sort of like 19th century Photoshop.
Right, right.
And yeah, so we don't have a huge selection, but a little bit.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think it's interesting to folks to see kind of where the process came from, and really to give them an idea of the longevity of these
Mm,
images too. I mean, that you can still
yes.
go to an antique shop, and I guess, being around Boston, I mean, there's got to be tons of old historical photographs in your area. So,
Yes, for sure.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, so having a studio at your home brings certain challenges, especially around lighting, and it sounds like you're a similar setup as me. If you're down in the basement, it's even more of a challenge. So
Yes,
so
indeed.
what's the setup that you guys have and found successful for you?
Yeah, so we're working with Speedotron power packs. We've got a Speedotron 4803 that we use for our primarily to just feed our key light. And then we use a Speedotron 2403 to do our fill light and our backdrop lighting. And then if we've got, if we're doing a taller portrait where we're getting more, of a full body shot, I do have some Photovitech LEDs. They're 600-watt LEDs that I'll kind of just use to kind of fill in some of that light where it falls off on the bottom. But and I'm sure you know this, Chad, with all that's involved with wet plate and all the challenges that that can come with in the environment, the atmosphere, the temperature, the humidity, lighting was just the most critical piece and really the most difficult to kind of nail down. It was really
Sure.
challenging.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of people go through a lot of different iterations on their lighting. I mean, I started off with those, humongous corkscrew CFL bulbs,
We
and
did too.
That's
yeah,
that's what we did too. Yep.
and
Yep.
it's hard for people to sit for the 10 or 12 seconds, even with those big lights. And yeah, I've worked my way up to the Speedotrons as well. Let me ask you this, just for my own information. So I recently picked up a 4803 pack. I've not been able to find like a giant, like a softbox to be able to utilize that for like full body shots. What size of softbox or reflector do you guys have on that one?
Mm. So on my key light, I've got an 18-inch beauty dish that I use for that.
Okay.
And I do have a larger dish as well that sometimes I will put on there if we've got a larger group. But for the most part, I go with that 18-inch beauty dish, which does have a metal diffuser in front of the bulb itself. And then my fill light for the 2403 is on a 24 by 32 box. So there's not most of our portraits are done sitting or from waist up. So very infrequently are we doing fuller body shots where we need that extra lighting. But again, when it does happen, I do have those LEDs that definitely help out to fill in that. You don't need all of that light down there. You just need a little bit more to fill it in to kind of help mesh with the strobe.
Sure, sure. What about your other gear that you've got? I think I read that you guys use a Deerdorf camera. What size, and have you tracked down like how old it is and those kind of things?
Yeah, so we found it on eBay, and it's yeah, 8 by 10 field camera. I want to say it's from the 50s, Dave, 19 somewhere in the 1950s. Okay. Yeah, and it's been great, and we have a Chamonix plate holder that's been working great for the last couple of years. I need to get a backup. But we first started off, I think Dave had mentioned, we started off with just a 4 by 5 speed Graflex for about a year, and we were just shooting up in our living room,
Yep.
and that was great. So it was definitely a big jump to get the 8 by 10,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, those are great starter cameras. There's a lot of
yes,
them out there, so.
yep,
The nice thing about the Deerdorf too, the plate holder that we have allows us to shoot 4 by 5, 5 by 7, or 8 by 10. So that's definitely beneficial as well.
Nice. How about lenses?
So we have a Tessar. It's a I believe it's a 300.
Yep.
But or is it a
That's a
50?
350.
Okay, yeah. But it is a Tessar, so it's a more modern lens. We have been researching some of the older lenses, the antique lenses. They are a little pricey, but I think eventually we'll probably invest in an antique lens.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I would think again, with the number of antique stores and things like that in your area, there's probably a few of them lying around that folks don't really know
Right.
what they are and what
Exactly.
they've got. So,
Yep.
Right.
good
We're
luck for
searching
the
for
hunt.
that. We're searching for that diamond in the rough. Yeah.
Exactly,
Yep.
exactly. Yeah. So, if you had the chance to photograph anyone today, who would it be?
Who for you, Mo? That's an easy question for me. I know who I would.
You go ahead, Dave. You tell.
Well, I mean, for me, it would be Jimmy Page in one of his Les Pauls. I
Ah,
mean,
there
there's
we
no
go.
doubt about that. Or Robert Plant, either or both of them together. And maybe let's get John Paul Jones here too. We'll take the last three remaining members of Led Zeppelin. I'd
There
take
we
that,
go.
sure.
With the number two Les Paul,
Yeah,
right?
there you go. Absolutely.
Okay, Maureen, how about you?
The only the only person or persons I can think of would be I'm obsessed with the Bruins hockey team, so I would love to get like Brad Marchand or Bergeron or Charlie McAvoy was just on TV with a black eye. I would love to get
There you go.
to
I
get
was
him in
just getting
this.
ready to say, there's your opportunity to get an update to your black eye photo.
Right, right.
Right.
Even though they break our hearts every spring, Chad, you know?
I know.
Miss a few teeth, the black eye. I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, this would be a
Yes.
great fit for wet
Yeah,
play.
absolutely. Good,
Yep.
good texture for the photo.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about social media, and I'm going to start with Airbnb. I saw that you guys at least had at one point a listing for an Airbnb experience.
Yes.
And I got to say, that is a great idea. I even did some research into that. It looks like they are no longer taking new experiences. So are you guys
Ah,
still
okay.
doing that?
So yeah, things I thought it was going to be a great idea too. I think the problem with us that we were having is that since we're not in Boston proper, we weren't showing up on any of the searches really for experiences in Boston. So we were getting some, but not not really enough. So I actually just took it off. But it's funny that you mentioned that because I was thinking about revisiting that again.
Yeah,
And because they had actually reached out to me and said, are you thinking about doing it again? And I had said what I just told you about, we really didn't seem to be coming up in the searches. Do you think there might be any leeway and some other sort of whatever the type of what am I trying to say? Yeah, how to come up in the search.
Sure.
But no one got back to me yet. But I think I would love to do it again because I think it's a great idea, for an experience. It's
And,
not something you normally see.
and it sounds like the kind of experience that you're giving your sitters now. You mentioned that you kind of have drinks and maybe a little, appetizers or something. I mean, it sounds like a
Yes.
pretty chill kind of evening. It's make a fantastic date night.
Yes.
exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
It was fun with the Airbnb because you would get people that obviously you would not normally get that are coming in from outside the area. We had people in from Canada, we had people in from England, we had folks from really all over the country coming when they're coming to Boston. So we were coming up on the search at some point, but for some reason it kind of tailed off quite a bit, and then we were kind of looking at it, and we were ranked at the top of the experiences at one point in time. But something about the way they used their algorithm or something must have just not been jiving with our booking. But it was more of an experience type thing, and that's kind of why what we do is more of an experience type thing, I should say, and that's kind of why we felt like that Airbnb experience would be perfect for what we were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But people are surprised, I think, when they come in and they see a charcuterie board and, we offer them, would you like a glass of Sauvignon Blanc or a beer? And they're like, sure, that'd be great. And so it's definitely I think people are pleasantly surprised and that we take them through the process. I think for the most part, people don't, you know, they didn't know that they were going to get a bit of history and, have some snacks and, have it be like a whole experience. So, and I find that a lot of, women come with their partners and, sort of like surprising them with it. And a lot of the guys say, I wasn't sure what I was getting myself into. And to be honest, I wasn't really looking forward to it, but
Yeah.
everyone seems to be very, very happy at the end.
Yeah, that's great. I love the idea. I mean, I minus the charcuterie board and the drinks. I mean, I really do try and make it something other than okay, sit here. I'm going to take your picture and you're on your way. I really love to share the details of the
Yeah.
process.
That's exactly the way we see it too, Chad, for sure.
Do you guys get? I guess do you have the room to be able to take folks back into the dark room and kind of show that
Yes.
side as well?
Yeah, we do.
Great, great.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think that we really enjoy about this is sharing the process. We and we've tried to keep our price point in a range where most people can afford to come and do this, and that's what we really want. We want to be able to kind of get this out to as many people as we can. One thing that we were talking about pop-ups earlier, but we had an art teacher from a local high school in Reading, Massachusetts, come with her family for a photo. And before they left, she said, I teach art at Reading High School. She said, all my students were born after the 2000. They've probably never seen an analog camera, let alone use an analog camera. Would you guys be willing to come into the classroom and do a demonstration? We were like, absolutely, So we were able to go in and work with an AP art class of about 7 or 8 kids and take them through the history of it. We let them actually pour their own plates. We let them pour it over a bucket because we knew it would be a little messy, but they were all able to pour their own plates
Yeah.
and take, we would take their tintype that they could take home with them at the end of the day. So it was a fun experience, and we've been back 3 times to Reading High School now, which has been a really fun experience to show these young kids who really, you think might be bored with the old process. They're actually enamored with it. They want to learn more about it, which is really fun.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, my wife and I have had the chance to go into multiple schools here in our area, and like I say, most of the time it's for the kind of the advanced photo class, and they're usually not very big. There's not a lot of kids that are doing that these days.
Right, exactly.
And luckily, most of the schools that we go to have a dark room, so it's just hey, pack up a cooler full of chemicals and bring a strobe and a camera, and you're pretty much ready to go.
And that's my kind of pop-up right
yeah,
there.
exactly.
Because it is a lot of work. It
I'm
really
right
is
there
to
with
do
you.
the pop-ups.
Yeah, it's a lot of gear to haul around.
No
So,
doubt.
yeah. So let's move on to this. So earlier this year, you guys had a TikTok video that seemed to go viral, and I think the last time I looked, it had like 1 million plus views or something.
That's Maureen. God bless.
So
Well,
so first off, the couple in that video was great. I mean, they were like super excited to see the process.
yeah.
But what I think is the coolest part is that instead of taking this video and making it be about them and your tintype studio, your caption is, let me help you find a tintype studio near you.
Yeah. Yeah. I that's really what I want to do is just help people learn more about this and try to have more people be aware of the process. So, and
It's
as
not really a competition for us, and when Maureen first did it, I was like, well, why would we be promoting other people? But then when I thought about it, it's like, the more people that know about wet plate, the more people that know about tin types, about amber types, the more awareness there is about it,
yeah.
right? The more potential business that we could get from it, right? So, and it's not about competition. It's about sharing our love for the art form, really.
Yeah, that's really fantastic. Did you guys have any idea that that video would take off like it did?
No, none whatsoever. It's
No
just
rhyme or reason.
it's just a fluke, you know? I mean, sometimes you think, oh, this is going to be a good one with a super cute baby. Nope, nothing. And so, but I've found that for me, it's people really like to see real, authentic reactions, and just like real authenticity seems to move people.
Yeah.
But
No, that's great. I mean, I saw that you guys post online on Facebook, for people to let you guys know where they were located. And I mean, did you get good feedback from that request?
oh, yeah, absolutely. I really want to make a big map of the whole United States, and I started to actually. Well, I have a list of all the wet plate artists. Well, I also reached out on the Facebook group for the wet plate artists, just trying to find out particular areas where I wasn't really finding people, and so people were responding, telling me where they were, and other wet plate artists were sharing other artists that they knew of. So it just felt like such a great like community of just wanting to share their knowledge about other people. And I was really surprised. I think for some areas like Texas, I couldn't believe how many wet plate artists there were there, and California. I was shocked, but it's great now. Instead of me having to just sit on my computer and Google, you know, Denver, Colorado, who's wet plate artist. Now I have a whole list compiled, and not just in the United States. I have in Germany and Austria and Australia. So I'm working my way outwards.
That's great. What's the total count on your list?
That's a good question. I didn't count, but I would say it's probably at least a good 50 to 60 anyway.
Okay. All right. Good. Good. I've been, as I've went through the guest lists and trying to find folks to talk to, I've been making up my own list, and I think I'm right around 90 or so folks all
Nice.
over the
Great.
world. And
Wow.
I think back to when I first got into the practice back in kind of 2016, and the thought at that time was, oh, there's 1,000 people worldwide, that's doing this, and it seems like there are a lot more than that. And I would think that, yeah, if there's only 1,000 and I've got 10% of them, that just doesn't seem quite right. I know there's more people out there
Right.
doing this
Yeah,
than that. So
They're
definitely.
out
Yeah.
there.
I have to say too, Chad. I think what you do with the podcast and talking to the different artists. That's a great service to the community as well. So I mean, kudos to you for what you're doing, my friend.
no, I appreciate that. Yeah, it's a fair bit of work, but I've really enjoyed getting to reach out and to talk to folks. I mean, we're all suffering from kind of this craziness of being obsessed with wet plate, and you know walking around looking for old brass lenses and things like that.
Yeah.
And what I find unusual is how much we all have in common that get into
Mm,
this. So it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
yeah.
Very true. Very
Yeah.
true.
I guess. So what's next? I mean, what's your next big TikTok video that you're going to release?
I don't know how I'm going to be able to top that.
Well, we have been talking about doing more of kind of showing who we are, a little bit more of like, this is who we are, this is what we do type of thing. Maureen was talking to a social media manager who mentioned that, when people see more of the people that are behind what's being, the content that's being created and the wet plates that are coming out of the studio, it kind of gives people a little more of an incentive to want to engage. So that's something that I think that we'll look to do a little bit more of, and I think also just about how we try to make this more of an experience because, like you were saying, Chad, too, it's like it's better to take. We feel it's more of an experience to take people through the process and give them some history of it when you're going to be making a photo for them that's going to essentially outlive them and last for generations of the family. You owe them a little more than 30 minutes or even 60 minutes. Most of our sessions tend to run about 90 minutes or so, and sometimes they go even longer depending on how the session is going.
Depends
So
how
it's
much wine we're drinking.
No,
but
that's
but yeah, so it's definitely. I think we need to kind of get that out on social media too. That this isn't just come in, wham bam, thank you, ma'am, we're taking your picture and you're gone. Show them that this is more of a date night experience too.
yeah. So I recently got on TikTok. I've got 3 videos on there now. My wife was like, "Look, Instagram's great and all, but all the young kids are on TikTok." Or as I like
Yeah.
to say, they're on the TikTok.
Yes.
So I'm kind of dipping my toes in there. So I'm glad to see that there's a few people out there. I've tried to go and search, who all in the wet plate world is in TikTok, and I would say there's probably not as many there
Hmm.
as there are on Instagram. So
Yeah.
it is
Yeah.
some fertile ground there, maybe.
Definitely. Maureen and I go back and forth on this all the time because I feel like Instagram is the more sophisticated crowd and TikTok is kind of the more kind of rapid fire, kind of craziness type of crowd where, you can see anything and everything there. So, but at the same time, we've had so many people come into the studio that say, "Oh, I saw you on TikTok. Oh, I saw you." Every time they say that, we look at each other. I'm like, "All right, yeah, TikTok. Yep, I get it.
And I
Okay."
give him a jab right in his side. See,
There you
there.
go.
See? Told you.
It's funny though, we have had some press coverage, some local TV, some local radio, some local print, but nothing drives business the way the social media does for us. It's really surprising how much business the social media drives for us.
Yeah, I would say, at least from my standpoint, almost everything up until, the last 6 months or so has either been word of mouth or Instagram. It's
Hmm.
never been, my website or, any type of ads that I've ran in the past on Facebook.
Right?
It's always been, well, somebody stumbled across it and thought, oh, that looks pretty cool. I'll save that for later. And then they finally decide to pull the trigger on it
Yeah.
Yep.
and make it
Same
happen.
here. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
interesting how that works.
Yeah.
That special occasion, that anniversary, or something special, that birthday, then
Do you guys have any special packages that are just for couples then, or is it pretty much open to, whoever wants to come in, they get kind of the same experience?
Yeah, it's pretty open right now, but we have been thinking about that a little bit to maybe create some different package pricing types of things. We have kind of a set pricing for our 5x7s, which is primarily what we shoot. We do a fair amount of 8x10 as well, but we find that most people are looking for a 5x7. But with every session, we'll shoot 2 or 3 plates, maybe sometimes 4 plates, and we'll give the person the opportunity to pick their favorite. But it's kind of a diabolical plan because most times they'll end up taking 2 and sometimes 3. So it's kind of, once they see one, they're like, oh wow, that's so cool, and then they see another one, like, oh, now I can't make up my mind. So it's like,
It,
but it works well. It
it,
works well.
and I should say, you guys operate a business called Evoke Tintype, right?
Correct.
yes.
Okay, yeah. And how did you guys come up with the name for that?
I think it was when I was telling you about the video that I had come across from the Sundance shoot. When I first saw that tintype, it really like evoked a feeling that I had never seen before or, felt before seeing an image. And it was just, I don't know, something so raw and beautiful. And I think it just and I think people here when they see their image, we've had many people just become emotional and they would cry. And so I think it's just something really, really special.
And I think one of the things that I noticed is that you guys are super encouraging to your sitters. I mean, you really make them feel good.
Oh,
And
thank
and I
you.
Thank
and I
you,
think
Chad.
that,
Thank you so much.
my wife and I have been in this position where we've had folks that have gotten their picture taken and maybe they just don't feel the best about themselves, and they get to see that image pop out and they're like, this is amazing. I feel beautiful in this image,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, when someone tells us that we made them feel beautiful for
Yeah.
the first time ever in a photo, it's it reinforces why we do this.
Uh,
And it's really, we obviously we're obsessed and we love shooting wet plate. I mean, we you have to really want to pursue this to the fullest. But it's really the people that we get to meet doing this that's so much fun. It's just we get to meet so many different people, like-minded folks that are into what we're doing, and we're creating memories for them, or we're sharing in a special time in their life, and just capturing their youth at a moment in time that they're going to have forever.
Yeah. As you guys think back on all of the images that you've created over the years, are there any that really stand out to you as something special that happened?
hmm.
That's a really good
Yeah,
question.
that's a good question. It's so funny because so many times I'll be seeing an image and in my mind I'm thinking this is the best one I've ever seen, or this is my favorite one. And it's just so strange that I can feel that way so often. But I'm trying to.
There are a few. There are a few. We've had some folks come dressed in some gothic outfits with the the contacts, the blue contacts in their eyes, where we've gotten some really cool
Oh,
photos.
okay.
And then we've just had some really beautiful girls with long flowing curly hair come in where you just have them in the right pose and the light just falls the right way, and it's just one of those magical shots that happens. We've got quite a few well, I'd say a handful of those types of photos. But it's funny, it's kind of like music in a way too, where some days you come down and you're shooting and everything's just going great, and then some other days you come down and everything you're looking at you feel like it's just crap. Like, what's going on?
There's actually one picture that stands out to me, and I think it was still during the pandemic. It might have been towards the end, and I was at a Whole Foods and I saw this beautiful African American woman with this really dark curly hair, and I just thought to myself, "Oh my gosh, what I would give to take her portrait." And I approached her and, just told her what I did and asked her if she would like to come someday. And finally she did. And when I finally saw her through the ground glass, I I got teary. I just couldn't believe that, I had this beautiful woman, and we just get to make as many images as we want and just play around and have fun, and that will always be. And I think she was the first person I ever, besides Dave and besides guitars and flowers and all the still lifes that we were doing during the pandemic. So it's just to have like a real person, in front of the ground glass was so magical to me. And and she's actually come back a few more times, but I'll never forget that first time I took her portrait. We luckily I took a bunch, so we have some on our wall. So I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, that's great.
Chad, can you imagine if we asked the Whole Foods checkout girl to come to our studio to take photos of us? Something tells me the police would be knocking at the door.
Yeah, sometimes, I mean, kudos to you, Maureen, for having the guts to walk up to somebody and say, "Hey, I'd love to have you to come over to my place, and I've got a studio there, and I'd love to take your picture."
That wasn't the only one. When we were coming out of the pandemic, she had brought a girl back from Trader Joe's, one of the managers at the gym, one of the guys that worked out at the gym, some guy that was driving an old classic car on Revere Beach. Hey, why don't you come up my house? Let's take a picture of your car. And, I mean, it's how we got going. You
Yeah.
know, it really is. She was just, and Maureen's. She's not really like an outgoing person that was, comfortable to just walk up to a stranger and ask them. So the fact that she was able to do that, I think shows how much she really loves this process too, because she just wanted to get people in front of the camera.
Sure. And I guess coming through the pandemic, I mean, you really didn't have access to a lot of people whenever you guys were learning this process.
No, none.
We had both. Maureen and myself to shoot, and we shot numerous portraits of each other, and then, anything that we could find that we thought might make an interesting still life.
Yeah. Are there any other aspects of the process that you guys would still like to try out sometime?
Yes, for sure. For me, I'd really love to do more spirit photography, but it's a little tricky. We just haven't carved out the time to, just really practice it. And also, I would love to do more vignettes, which I haven't done. But so those. Oh, and also some more gems. I love the Tiny Tin types, but again, we found it a little tricky. I feel like we get a lot of chemical like contamination on them, but again, it's those are just some things that we really just need to carve out time and practice.
Now, when you've done the gems before, do you actually cut the plates to that size and then pour the collodion, or do you start with the bigger plate, take the image, and then cut it down?
We cut them before, and we actually learned from Mark in France over like just through a workshop on our computer. So that went really well.
Yeah, they've
Yeah.
really been our ongoing continuing ed mentors, really. As Mo was saying, the spirit photography, the gems, the vignettes, they've all been kind of follow up courses that we've done with Mark in France. And of course, they're our help desk. I mean, anytime we have some type of chemical issue going on, or we're getting something wacky happening with plates, it's a quick email to Mark or a quick text to Mark, and he usually gets right back to us. And most times he can diagnose us. Sometimes he's like, "Well, you got me there." And when Mark Osterman tells you've got him, well, that's not a comforting feeling.
Yeah. I guess with the spirit photography, that's probably more of a continuous light kind of
Yes.
thing.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Although I'm sure you're familiar with Dave with the VPS Gettysburg.
Oh yeah. Yep.
So he actually uses strobe for it, and he gets great results.
Nice.
But I'd love to pick his brain one of these
Yeah.
days.
Yeah. So when you take your gem photographs, since you cut the plates down that size, how do you actually take the image in camera then? Do you have like a really small insert that you can drop those into, or what's your process for that?
So we actually use a Pentax SLR 35 millimeter camera, and then we're just cutting the plate to fit the aperture opening on the inside back of the camera.
Ah, okay.
And it is one that does have a manual shutter on it, which is the main ingredient there. So as long as you've got the manual shutter, we can make them even with the strobes having the manual shutter, as long as we're just dialing in the aperture setting correctly for the gem. It is really challenging when you're developing the gems, just because the image is so small and you're trying to figure out, okay, what am I looking for first here? What's coming up? And okay, stop. You know?
Yep. Yep. I made some gems to put in a pocket watch that I gave to my son for his wedding last year.
Oh,
Very
And
cool.
what I did was I took some of the scrap aluminum that Maine Trophy Supply sends you whenever
Yeah.
you
Yes.
get these little, what are they, 3x4s or something like that. I
Yeah,
made like
yeah.
a little plate holder for my speed graphic, and that's what I shot on. And then I kind of was at a distance from them, and then I cut their faces out of it.
yeah.
So
Oh,
Very cool
that's
work.
great.
work
Yeah,
together.
that's awesome. Yeah, Maureen's always saying she wants to make a gem for a locket or something like that, which would be
Maybe
really
I can
cool.
get the puppy. That's my dream. I
Yeah.
There
can
you
get the
go.
new puppy
This
in
poor
one.
this poor dog is going to be shot in so many tin types. Oh my gosh.
I was going to say, I'm surprised that the two of you don't have some kind of eyesight issues from all the strobes that were going off during the pandemic,
We,
trying to pick up
we
the
probably
process.
do.
Yeah.
It's really
Well, yeah, the strobes came into play after we decided to kind of make this a
Ah, okay,
business.
yeah,
Yeah, so we learned with the constant lighting, but then like you were saying earlier, it's hard enough for an adult to sit still for 10 seconds, let alone a baby or an animal. So we said we're going to have to try to learn strobe lighting. And that's what we did. And we were fortunate enough to find a gentleman close to us here. He's in Manchester, New Hampshire, Gary Sampson, who makes wet plates using strobe lighting. So we were able to go up to his studio and spend an afternoon with him and kind of see his setup. And that's kind of where I got the inspiration for the Speedotrons because that's what he was using.
right, right, yeah. Well, you've mentioned the Ostermans as mentors. Are there other artists or photographers out there that inspire your work or that you've communicated with?
Yeah, I love oh my gosh, there's so many people. I love Carla Rodriguez for Black Hand and
Sally Man.
yeah, Sally Man. Dave Shrimpton is I love his work. And Brett Briggs and let's see, he's out in Salt Lake. I don't know if you're familiar with someone in Barcelona named Martí. I'm going to butcher his last name. It's like Martí Andanak. I don't know if you've ever seen his work, but he actually uses constant lighting and his posing of his sitters is really beautiful. He uses a lot of just couches or big chairs. So,
I like a lot of Justin Barucki's still life work that he does. He does
oh
some really
yeah,
cool still life work.
yeah,
Yeah, that's great.
and
Yeah, I do follow Marty on Instagram. He's got some pretty cool stuff.
yeah, and Blake Wiley and let's see, Patrick Bosque is in France, and he does a lot of vignettes, which first really inspired me to try to learn how to do vignettes. And his lighting is really beautiful. And Greg Shea, I think we started around the same time, so we sort of partnered up, and we're always trying to help one another. And he does wonderful work too.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Who are the people out in Arizona, honey?
Oh yeah, Silver and Cedar.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
They do some really
Yep.
nice work
Yeah,
too.
they're great.
Matthew
He does
Stella.
great.
Yep.
Yeah, he does a great job with
Yeah,
his lighting. Really good job with his lighting.
really nice people.
Yeah, it's good. It's great to have a community of folks out there that you can reach out to and ask questions. I mean, it seems to be pretty open, I think,
Yeah,
for the
Yes.
for
most
the
part.
most part, that's what we found for sure.
Yep. What advice would you give to folks that are just starting out with wet plate?
Be patient.
I would say call Mark in France.
Yeah, that's probably the best advice we could
They'll,
give.
they'll be putting in a toll number to reach them.
Yeah, right. They're gonna need a switchboard operator. Um, but yeah, I mean, I would say patience and practice. You just it's. I kind of likened learning wet plate to learning an instrument. You just have to continuously practice and just be repetitive and be consistent. And again, I think that was really the silver lining in the fact that we learned this during the pandemic was that we just had nothing really but time on our hands.
Yeah, and I would also say, try not to like it's great to get inspiration from people, but you really just have to just do whatever you feel looks right to you. What if you like contrast, maybe you like a lot of contrast, maybe you don't. There's no right or wrong. It's all about what you like. So I remember Mark and France telling me that early on. So that was really helpful because you're trying to get clean plates or you're trying to, you know, get the focus right, but maybe you don't want the eyes to be necessarily that in focus, or maybe, you want it to look more like dreamlike, or so it's you just have to just I would say, just stay true to yourself, and just in whatever feels right to you is going to be the right way.
Yeah, that's good. That's good advice. I mean, there's a lot of folks that, maybe get into it because they've seen someone else's images and they want to just copy that. But everybody kind of needs to figure out their own way in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's so many different ways that people approach this that if you're asking too many people, you can get somewhat confused in what you're trying to accomplish,
Yeah, especially when it comes to troubleshooting. I don't know if you
Yes.
guys probably see those posts online. It's like, oh, I've got these little black dots on my image. What do I do? And it's like, oh, well, you need to filter your silver bath, or oh, you need to wash the plate longer, or oh,
Yeah,
go do this.
there's a million. Yeah, there's
Oh,
a million
yes.
suggestions. Yeah.
Or pour denatured alcohol on a plate if you want to get the varnish off. I do not suggest doing that. Do not do that.
Okay. I've used Everclear for that, but
Yes.
not denatured alcohol.
Yes,
Yes.
that yes. But found that bad advice somewhere online.
That's right.
If you guys could go back and change one thing about your wet plate experience, what would it be?
Good question.
I don't know if I would change anything, to be honest, Chad, because thinking back on it, it was learning was frustrating. It was hard. It was challenging, but at the same time, it was fun. I mean, those days during the pandemic when I was working from home, but how much was I really working from home? So I'd finish up my day at 4:30 or 5 o'clock, and would have a quick bite. Would start shooting at 6 o'clock, and before you know it, it'd be 2:30 in the morning, and we didn't even realize it. So. But I don't know if I would change too much myself.
Okay. One of the better things to come out of the pandemic then.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Well, Maureen and Dave, thanks for being on the podcast today. What is the best way for folks to either see your work or maybe have their image taken by you?
Sure. So our website is evoketintype.com, and our Instagram is just evoketintype. And yeah, I think that's it.
And our TikTok as well.
Oh yeah, TikTok. evoketintype. Yeah, thank you so much, Chad. We really are honored that you asked us to talk.
Yeah, thank you, Chad, because I've followed your page for quite some time. I've listened to a number of the podcasts, and
Yeah.
I've always said to Maureen that this is a great service that Chad's doing for the wet plate community, and I honestly always said that I wish he would reach out to us and ask us sometime.
No, I appreciate that. Let me ask you this before we go. So from this one TikTok video, there's been a ton of people that are trying to track down photographers. Are you guys okay for other folks in the community to go down there and kind of check that out? And if they see, hey, who's a good wet plater in Albuquerque, just to start throwing some names out there?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Oh my goodness, absolutely. Yeah, and from that video, it was so nice. Like, I had a couple of other like wet plate artists kind of like help me, because they reached out and said, "Oh my gosh, there's a TikTok blowing up," and I said, "I know, I need help. I can't do this on my own." So people were chiming in, and it was so helpful. It's really great, and actually even today there's still some traction, and some wet plate artists are kind of like helping, saying like, "I'm here, I'm there." So that's really great.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Gotta spread the word.
Excellent. Well, thanks again, guys. Good luck with your photography business, and I hope you keep making some great plates.
Thank you
as
so
well,
much.
Chad, and good luck with your venture into the TikTok.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
All right.
Take care.
Take care.
I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode and maybe even picked up some insights that will help you along in your own wet plate journey. I'd love to hear from you on who you'd like to have on in a future episode. So send me a message and follow our Instagram account at 10 Questions with any feedback. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button on your favorite podcast provider. Thanks for listening to me, Chad Shryock, and my expert guests, and I look forward to you joining me again in the coming weeks for a new episode of 10 Questions.